Welcome back to some Warno action in SD League Season 5, Division 4. Today with Wombat, also known as MiG-29S, against Cheyenne Mountain Complex, also known in Discord as Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. And the first map pick is Airport, where Wombat will play first Tankova Divise against 157 Ya. And the second map that was randomly picked is Isura, where Underground Tunnel Enjoyer will play DIVMOB against second Panzergrenadier as the counterpick. If we look at the first Tankova from MiG-29S, they have a rather limited infantry tab and somewhat decent artillery with Adana, but the main focus are the T-72 tanks that are very strong in the current meta. And they also have some Special Forces Recon Infantry Squad with 6 men. So those are the key units. Air tab is rather limited. So the focus definitely, as the name suggests with first Tankova, is on the tanks. On the other side, for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, we see the 157 Ya with a reservist infantry division that has a bunch of different infantry units, but relatively light and cheap. Some good artillery pieces with 280mm guns and the Berg with 130mm. But we can see that the tank top is a lot lighter than for the first Tankova that MiG-29S is playing, and is primarily the T-55s. And they don't have a Special Forces recon, so in the recon department there is an advantage for the first Tankova at the start. Not many helicopters, and air tab is also not as big, but you can get a plane more in or two maybe, depending on how you make the division in the deck. The first map of this matchup is Airport, where Wombat will play as blue on the left side, and Underground Tunnel Enjoyer will play on the right side as the red division. If we look at the deployment, we have one of the Special Forces Scout together with one of the normal recon units, but with a BVP transport. Same up here. And just one of the normal recons with the BVP up in the north. So they are spread out in 3 groups. And the BVPs are going a bit back so that they can shoot from farther behind without getting hit themselves. One forgot, tries to get into this building, which is a pretty nice position to shoot in this area. We have 2 AA pieces, both going into this northern center location with Elena. And we have 1 CV together with a bunch of units that are all making their way towards the town in the middle. I assume the CV is just going to the zone and probably goes to the southern zone afterwards. And on the other side, for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, we have also 3 groups of scouts. 2 going towards the south, 1 checking the flank to make sure no surprises come. A single scout for the middle. And actually 2 scouts over here in the north. It's actually a double scout for behind the zone. That's pretty defensive. And we have 1 CV over here together with 2 T-55s. We look at their passing, they go into the zone. So the scouts are more defensive behind the zone, while the tanks go towards the zone. And the CV is heading towards the northern zone first. But I assume the Fagot takes one of the defensive position in this area, similar to what Wombat is doing. And actually we have a second CV. I didn't notice that before, so we have a CV in the northern zone and one to this zone. So that's a attempt to get quick points. I'm not sure if that's really necessary. Usually you move a CV up in Boris in the north and then go down to Fedor. But this way he gets a pretty early, pretty fast point tick until Wombat can also take his positions. And a few infantry units with ATGMs are actually heading to the north into the forest. That's an interesting location. We can check that later if he tries to make a flank or just secures the flanks so that he doesn't get punished for leaving that open. So yeah, so much about the deployment. Let's check out what will happen and then we talk about the rest. In the last matches that I've seen on airport, there was a lot of action around this town and this open area in the center rather than up north in this open field. So it will be interesting to see if this deployment into the town will pay off for Wombat. And if he can make use of his heavier tanks in this open area in between the town and the forest that is probably going to be used by underground tunnel enjoyer. We see a T-10K plane, one of the AA planes, with 3 rockets, or 3 different types of rockets, in total 8 rockets. But it doesn't get a target, probably just make sure nothing annoying comes in. I will quickly get out. It's a 270 point plane, so a heavy investment that doesn't pay off in this case. So that's a lot of tempo. Underground tunnel enjoyer will lose now because he's missing those units on the ground. Special forces scouts manage their way towards their target locations and get deployed without any problems. So far no fighting going on. The CV for Wombat in the north, or from the center, going towards the zone further on the back, in the further in the middle I mean. And I'm sorry if you can hear my mobile phone ringing in the background. I can't really go take a call right now, sorry. And actually the CV in the north going down to the missiles of the BVP, I presume. We also have a transport going down. So we have 2 BVPs that probably shot and destroyed a unit each. That's rather annoying for underground tunnel enjoyer, which I'm probably going to call red from here on, because saying underground tunnel enjoyer every single time, that's such a long name, man. Now a bit of back and forth with rockets, but the T-55 already have taken a lot of damage and are outnumbered. So the second one has to smoke off and now retreat. There's no point lead yet for Wombat since he hasn't taken the southern zone, since he only had 1 CV. That CV is on the move, but only going back right now. We don't have a second CV on the way yet. But he doesn't really have control over the site, so he isn't planning on taking it, I assume. Which is a bit of a dangerous way to play, since everything around here is now open and units could go to his back lines and disturb the reinforcement roads. I saw that he sends 1 scout to this location to make sure that this doesn't happen, but if Red noticed this lack of units in this forest, or in this open space, then he could still make use of it and overwhelm the single scout. A lot of infantry coming in. Make use of the strengths of that division, which is a lot of cheap reservist units, infantry units. I'm not sure if he will manage to accomplish much though, given that there's already quite a lot of infantry in the buildings for the blue side, and the fact that the transports are getting under fire on their way, so it's not very good. Allow for anti-air defense. Currently no combat going on in the north, but Red is taking the advantage that there's no scout anymore in the north and moves forward and will probably get the annoying flank attack this way. And we already see artillery fire. 2 100mm artillery pieces taking down the defended locations or putting them under pressure. I think blue has a pretty strong position at the moment, but I don't know if I really like that he has his flanks so wide open and the zone not under his control. I think maybe he should have invested a bit into securing the southern zone instead of just completely giving it up. The red side now is at +1 tick, since he managed to get the zone. Actually, one of the helicopters for Wombat manages to pick off the flanking attack, a scout coming in. So he noticed that his scout in the north got destroyed and managed to do the right thing and pushes back. One T-72 coming in. Tries to support the attack in the north. Another T-72 is already there. I'm not sure if they should be standing around in the open like that. Especially since Wombat already knows that there are 2 artillery pieces. And there are now 4 T-54 tanks coming in, the reservist tanks. So first a blob of infantry units, now a blob of cheap tanks. I don't think he can really push through, but if he can keep Wombat busy while he has a +2 tick in the points, I think that would already be enough, so he doesn't have to be aggressive in this position. Although I feel like the heavier division, first Tankova, may have a better game in the late game, so that Underground Tunnel Enjoyer wants to get more advantage early. BMPs from the north and the forest now shooting at the units that are out in the open. The PvP is not as much of a loss, and it does get a kill in return. But the T-72 technically could get a side shot. It's a bit of a dangerous location. While the sheep tanks in the south moving forward to get into battle with the infantry units. Assume he doesn't see much. Let's check out the vision for a moment. We start with the vision of Wombat. He sees all of those units coming in. He does not see the tank over here. Oh, wait, that was his tank. Never mind. While on the other side, Red doesn't see how many infantry units are in these buildings. Let's go back to full vision. As there are battles going on right now, we see a lot of blue units actually going down. So despite not knowing how many infantry units blue has in this town, and the tank just moving forward, they actually managed to destroy a lot of blue units, and with little losses. I'm not sure if even a single one of them died. There are 2 damaged and 1 basically handshaking with the infantry unit, but the infantry unit has no anti-tank rocket launcher, so the tank isn't really in danger, but not shooting at them at the moment either. Artillery firing probably where the fagot was before, so that's why he tried to get that location. Another blob of cheap reservist infantry units coming in, together with a military police unit, so that the debuff is removed from the reservists. We have no artillery yet. Oh, it's hiding behind the supply truck. We do have 122mm artillery now on the side of Wombat. And it does get the location where the T-54 were standing around. So that's well, it doesn't get a kill, so it's not that great, that amazing, but at least he did get some damage in. And maybe the last shell will actually... it's spread out too much. But the previous shell was quite nice on target. One of the very expensive planes that we saw in the start, now going down. So that was quite wasted, actually. Helicopter took some damage, but not destroyed. Another blob of infantry units. Or maybe it was the one I saw earlier. I'm not sure anymore. So it seems like Underground Tunnel Enjoyer is actually pushing, or tries to push more, and put on some pressure. Even though he has a +2 tick now with 450 points in the lead. While Wombat is more in a defensive position. He tried to push a bit here in the north. But apart from that, I'm not seeing a game plan yet. Where I can say, oh, that's what he's trying to do. He might have the better late game, but there isn't like a really big T-72 blob that is building up at the moment. There are two up north. No. Oh, there's one now coming in to support in the center. So that's pretty nice against the cheap tanks on the other side. One of them retreating to get repaired. Other one getting repaired right now. And it's a pretty nice blob with the reservists together with the military police. But then, by themselves not as strong. Usually you would want to have some infantry fighting vehicles or tanks behind to give the firing support. And you would want to have some AA units nearby, because if something like a cluster plane comes in, such a blob is very quick to get completely annihilated. And we now see the problem of the lack of support. The IFVs can fire from long range, where the infantry units cannot fight back. So that attack is not going to make it anywhere. They're just throwing themselves at the meat grinder at the moment. And the tanks aren't ready to really make use of the intel of knowing where the IFVs now are. I understand the attempt that Underground Tunnel Enjoyer wants to push and extend his lead, put on some pressure, doesn't give the opponent the time to keep building up units. I think what I would like from Wombat at this stage is to check out with a scout the southern zone to see if he can do something here. He knows that there are defensive positions here. He knows about this blob. He knows that there are units in this area. He might not know how many units there are in the north. That's a bit surprising. But yeah, he doesn't know if the south might be less defended, because your opponent has only as many points available as you have. So if he puts a lot of points into the north and center, it means there have to be less units in the south. So you could at least try to figure out if that zone is less defended than the position where you had battles, because usually people improve their defenses in the location where battles have been going on. I think the units for Wombat actually, they are reaching a dangerous mass now. So the slow and defensive play from the heavier division might actually play out. Especially since Red threw away some units. And he's now getting into a point where things might turn around. He still has a +2. He still has an advantage in my eyes. He needs to resupply his fagot to make sure Tanks of the opponent can't just move forward as simple and quickly as they want. But overall, a fairly matched battle, I would say. Even though the points say a different matter. Artillery trying to get the CV. It all depends on when and how the push from Wombat will happen, and if he gets 1 or 2 zones, if he will break through. Like down here in the south, I think there's a possibility if he advances with a bigger, better blob of units that he can push through and can get both zones in the south. That would then turn things around very quickly. But he's also trying to do something in the north, which may or may not work out. So far I think it looks not like it will succeed given the amount of units there are for Red to reinforce the position. We don't have... well, we have the CV. I was about to say there's no CV that can quickly move into the zone, even if he takes the territory. But I guess the CV could do the job. In the south we have no CV. So that might be a mistake. Well, it depends. Maybe he isn't planning to actually push in, it's just a defensive position. But for this zone to recapture it in an emergency and to possibly take this southern zone, it would be good to have a CV around, I think. Artillery getting one of the fagots. Second one still firing. T-72s moving forward. So this blob of infantry units actually wants to attack from behind, which is an interesting attempt at least. Now 4 artillery pieces on the side of Red, trying to get the Fagot and the T-72. They aren't very accurate, so a lot of shots missing their target. Most of the shots missing their targets. I don't think I've seen a hit right now. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't watch. Maybe they just don't like to get watched. So one T-72 got destroyed in the north. That was one pretty far forward in the open. I think there's a bit of a danger that Wombat might eventually tap out, thinking, oh, he can't get back the points anymore. He can't break through. But I do think he could have a chance. Well, the chance I wanted to talk about was before I saw this huge blob of tanks now. Of course, there will some tanks go down from the ATGM and tanks from the other side, because they're just cheap tanks, 9 frontal armor, but they can do a lot of damage. And they will do a lot of damage now. They're moving forward, Scout moving forward. So I think the red side will actually take the advantage now. The town in the center is likely to get overrun, and from this position he threatens 2 zones and ruins the chance of Wombat to actually advance to a zone on his own, so that he can't get the point take down. The reservist tank 60 points. I'm not sure how many that are, but I think that's 2 or 3 ticks of points actually. So that's not a single buy, but a lot of points invested at once. And we also see one of the big rocket artillery units now. Trying to shoot towards the area behind the town with a T-72 currently. He might have suggested some infantry units in these buildings as well. So a lot of artillery play actually on the side of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. A lot of cheap spam of units. A lot of A-clicking forward with a lot of units. So he isn't a man of taking his time for methodical advancement and a lot of planning and a lot of combined arms with mixed units, but rather single unit types and just spamming them forward. That seems to be the mission at the moment. Artillery in the north, not really hitting much, but the T-72S now on a fire by the Fagot. That is actually out of ammo now. The T-55 has 15 pen against 80 armor, so that might need to get closer or try something else. And artillery coming in now. So I think one of the mistakes from Wombat is to repeatedly have units standing around. Like, of course, this tank was stunned a moment ago, but the fact that the artillery had time to aim at it means that it has been standing around for a while. Wombat has 2 artillery pieces by now, but they are currently not taking aim at anything. There's a clear advantage in red units making a concave around Wombat units. So not just the point takers at the side of red at this point, but also just the sheer mass of units. And with infantry going forward and maybe some of the tanks soon going forward as well, that area is probably going to fall into the hand of red. And I believe then Wombat might realize that he can't take much more, unless he still has the guts to try and attack here in the north. Because where else does he want to start an attack to get the points? But even then, if he takes this 1-point zone Fedor, he just stops the tick. So actually to win, he would need more than just this zone. And we see another big blob of units coming in. We have a few units going up into the northern area. I assume that's the tanks. Yeah. Some of the tanks on attack move going to the center. Rocket artillery getting a lot of kills up in the north. One T-72 got destroyed in the process. T-55 taking a dangerous battle against the T-72. But they're doing a bit of damage, and the T-72 is badly damaged already, so maybe that can work out for him. More T-72s coming in. So this part of the division that you have to spam your best tanks that are very strong at the moment, I think Wombat understood and tried to do. But if you have to replace defensive units of different kinds because of the pressure from the opponent, that obviously doesn't work as well. And if you then lose some tanks during the battles as well, you can't get the dangerous mass up. Which might have been what ruined Wombat's plan. I'm not sure how much the game would have changed if he had taken the southern zone with a leader and a infantry unit, a scout or something. That wouldn't be a heavy investment, but just to try and contest that zone instead of just giving it to the opponent. But the battles seem quite one-sided. The kill ratio might not be totally in the favor of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, since he had these cheap units that died pretty quickly. But I think he was very effective in his use of the forces and destroyed a large amount of his opponent's forces. So point-wise, he definitely had a huge advantage in the kills. And he's now just A-clicking forward. And Wombat realizes there's nothing more to gain. and taps out. Kill ratio, okay, it is quite convincing, 2.5. And if you then add that he had the cheaper units that probably died in more quantity, that's quite impressive. So there was probably never a real danger of him losing this battle. We check the kill and losses. One T-72 got a bunch of kills, but that's the only real big killer on the side of Wombat. And if we check down on the side of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, his artillery got some kills. Infantry unit as well. So he did quite well. So that was the first map. Let's head straight into the second map. On the second map, Isura, Wombat is playing as second Panzergrenadier, which are a pretty good all-rounder, but they don't exceed in any special fields. So that's the downside to being quite good at everything. They are not great at any of those things, which can be taken advantage of. But it's a good division for new players. Their infantry tab has not very strong infantry. They're usually low in size, but they have some Marder Milans as IFVs that are quite effective, and they have some forward deployment infantry units, so that they can do some quick work. They have the M110 artillery pieces, and they have Leopard 2A3s as tanks combined with cheaper variants. So the tanks can also come into play, but the numbers are limited. So compared to a tank division, they don't have as many, and they don't have the 2A4 variants. So they have decent tanks, but not the best. And the Recon Squad, they have Aufklärer Special Forces, so that's quite nice, and not really a good helicopter tab and some nice planes. While on the other side, with DIVMOB for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, we can see that he stays true to his previous tactic of having cheap reservist units that he can spam, as DIVMOB has a lot of chief provincials that he can combine with some airborne commando units, for example. He does have not a very big artillery tab, but M55. And as previously, just cheap tanks. The M470 with a 50 pen gun, but also reservist. And the M41 reservist tank with 12 pen. Both tanks have no smoke launcher, so they can rush forward, but they can't survive if they start to get shot at. So that's something he needs to watch out for. But the Jagdpanzer 90 has smoke launchers, so that's another cheap tank unit he can make use of that actually does have smokes. We do have a Special Forces Scout in this division, the SDRA 8. A 10-man squad, Special Forces, Shock, Forward Deployment, and the Forward Flag Trade. So that's definitely a nice unit. They don't have any helicopters, and the air tab not the greatest as well. So the focus will be again on the cheap reservist infantry units and tanks getting spammed, I assume. So let's check out the deployment. Again, on the left side in blue, we can see Wombat with his second Panzergrenadier, and on the right side in red, Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. I'm not sure in which way you usually turn this map, but I turned it this way since we had Wombat in blue on the left side last map, so I just picked this side to look from. And yeah, you can tell me in the comments if that is wrong and everyone else looks at the map from the other direction. I'm open for changes and improvements. We can see a lot of forward deployment on the side of Wombat. It's a bit more than I would usually expect from 2nd Panzer. They do have some good forward deployment, but not the best. And usually I wouldn't put as much in my deck, but I could be wrong. I mean, he's probably the better player, which isn't that difficult. So let's see how it plays out. At least he does get a bit of a tempo advantage this way. He does have a CV down here that will immediately unload in the southern zone, and then probably go to Echo next. The ATGM is going to the center. I'm not sure if he misplaced it. It wouldn't make more sense to go further up here somewhere if he wants to go to that building. The infantry unit securing the position there. Another ATGM. Again, I'm a bit confused why that ATGM in the south is going to that location. Could have gone to that and the other ATGM to this, maybe? I'm nitpicking, sorry. Just wondering. Scout going to that location. Infantry units moving forward. So, a relatively wide front line. Northern zone not getting captured. Oh, no, never mind. There's a CV. The CV is going to the north and then down to the south. And then going to the zone where the other CVs in the nearby? I'm confused. And we have one of the Zwillinge and Ihawk as anti-air together with a Gepard. So 3 AA pieces and 2 Panzergrenadiers with the Marder, transport with Milans. So those are the more effective IFVs than the forward deployment has. Together with a 6-man squad. That is quite decent in the armament. Like the weapons of the units aren't that bad, but it's just 6-man, so that's a bit of the issue. The forward deployment Fallschirmjäger have 21 Panzerfaust, so again that's pretty nice. 8-man shock trade. So while they are not special forces, it's a very decent forward deployment unit that is spread out. It's a big map, so maybe to spread out is the right call to avoid getting any forces of the opponent pushing through immediately at the start. While on the other side, Underground Tunnel Enjoyer has 2 CVs, and they are moving one to the south and one to the north. I'm not sure if he will, on a fast movement command, go through this zone. You might need to make a manual command into that zone and then to the next zone. That's something we can check once the game starts. Here's some forward deployment AA, together with some infantry units and scout. And the Special Forces SDRA that we were talking about in the phase before the deployment. And yeah, so there are 2 big blobs of units again for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, and 3 Scimitars behind to support it. But not really any great aggressive plays. And another flanking attempt, presumably. So yeah, I think both will be a bit more defensive in the early stages. But let's take a look what they actually do instead of letting me make suggestions and ideas that probably won't happen. So the map has quite a few towns in all different directions in the center, multiple town complex zones, and in the zone in the north and in the south. But there's a lot of empty space in between, so while you can make use of infantry for the defense of the positions, if you want to push through, or if you get shot at from a distance, then the IFVs and tanks can actually shine. So I'm not sure if I would rather have infantry or tank divisions on this map. I don't know it well enough for that. There's a bit of a clash from the units, both trying to unload beyond the opponent, actually. But Underground Tunnel Enjoyer seems to have noticed that, while Wombat did not notice it, but Milan doesn't get out in time. Fallschirmjäger, oh, that's a expensive, not special forces, but forward deployment unit. So quite a few losses on the side of Wombat. So both actually advancing so far that they're directly in combat with the opponent. So a lot more aggression than assumed previously from my side. Currently a +3 tick for Wombat. As I mentioned, the zone back here didn't get captured by Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. So that's why he's still on a +2, or why Wombat has a +2. While the zones in the center did not get captured yet. But Wombat has a CV on the way, so at least in the points he might get an advantage, unless the Paracommando can manage to take that out. It would be in range if they get vision. And it doesn't seem like the Jäger Aufklärer will get them down, as they are under fire from all different directions at the moment. Marder not firing yet, but the Gebhardt gives some firing support. Panzergrenadier going into a battle against 3 infantry units, so that's not going to work out. Two flanking infantry units in the south. So I think the opener was actually won by Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, despite having the points loss. He got the better position and better trades. Now the AA guns serve as infantry support by taking out the Fallschirmjäger, and the CV can move forward. Milan got 2 of them, but they also got the kills on the Fallschirmjäger. So they secured the zone basically for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. One of the cheap M41 tanks now moving in. The Milan still has 3 rockets left, so it's a dangerous pass to move through, especially if you stop in the line of sight. That's not going to work out. But it misses, just a stun. I'm not sure why the CV doesn't advance. There's just a Milan that can't shoot it. Or maybe he expects more infantry units in the back and wants to play it safe, which is fine. Milan in the north has to retreat. Oh well, doesn't manage to retreat. I guess it was in the range of one of the infantry units. Milan, or the Marder Milan, firing at the infantry unit, but now he might get under fire from the rocket launchers of those infantry units from the Paracommando. SDA waiting in the back. Some infantry units can't get the Marders, so they have to retreat. And we see another one of those big blobs of units together with the reservist units together with a military police force. Gendarmes in this case. So the reservist trait is removed from these units. Personally, it feels like a bother to play reservists, because it's like an additional step that you have to think about and constantly pay attention to. But for a beginner, it's a bit annoying, at least for me. And I don't like to have these single units somewhere that have this trait that makes them weaker. So if you are with the blob, obviously the military police can remove it, and I get the concept, but it feels annoying to play it on me. But Underground Tunnel Enjoyer has made it work very well so far. And I think he has an advantage on this map as well, despite the 400 points that he is behind. And at least he looks very well confident with it, and as he gives me the confidence in him that he can achieve something with it. Like, I believe that he will get another blob soon and then gain some territory with it, because it has worked out so well previously. Well, that didn't work out though. 2 units in transport getting destroyed by the Fallschirmjäger. I'm not sure if he thought that area was cleared or if he just took a risk. Or the passing just went a bad way. That also happens quite some often. Don't blame the players, blame the game. Skimitas giving some fire support. But yeah, we see this big blob of units in the center again, moving forward with the help of the military police. There's also this military police vehicle, the box that's moving forward. Don't move, I want to show you. Well, it's a nice looking car if we could see it. And it blows up. But yeah, that together with the gendarmes that were unloaded from it, you have 2 units, 1 infantry unit that can go with your reservist infantry, and the box military police car that can go with the cheap tanks. Actually, the JPK isn't a reservist unit, but the other tanks on the side of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer with DIVMOB have the reservist trait. So there are actually quite a few blue units now. They're getting destroyed, 2 Marders, a Panzergrenadier, so there are quite some losses. But the map, if you zoom out, looked actually quite blue. I'm not sure if DIVMOB has the numbers advantage at the moment. And since it is a lighter division, and it is behind in points, it is the side that now has to put on the pressure. But as we can see with a lot of damaged units, he does put on the pressure. So while he does have a deficit in the points, and Wombat has quite a few units on the field, Underground Tunnel Enjoyer manages to find a spot where he can pressure his forces. A bunch of recons reinforcements, not recons, coming in. We have only 1 artillery pieces so far, but more coming in now. But that's something that also worked very well for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer in the last map, so I'm not surprised. And it's definitely something he should take advantage of. For artillery units, the reservist trait is not as terrible, I think. So it means you have cheaper artillery that you can get earlier and in more quantity. CV is already ready to go into the center zone. If Underground Tunnel Enjoyer can take control over it with his units. M41 getting down by a rocket, I think from Milan. Zwilling going down. I'm not sure if we actually saw a Leopard 2A3 before this one. So maybe that can make a bit of a difference if the heavy tank or 2nd Panzergrenadier comes in. But we see a lot of blue units dying. Artillery doing some work. Not much airplay. That's actually something that could get mentioned. So far, I think not a single plane, if I remember correctly. So both sides believing that they can win with their infantry and tank units, primarily, but also with the support of the artillery and other units, of course. We take a moment to look at the view of both players. This is what Wombat can see. Only a few infantry units and the AA in the backline. While the view for Underground Tunnel Enjoyer, he only sees the units in the center and the one scout over here. But he tries to get some more vision and damage done in the backlines with these infantry units in the south. And another blob coming in. So he stays true to his strategy, sending in big blobs of single type units at a time, and then pushing forward with them, supported by the artillery. It actually looks quite fun if I watched it played like this. So I'm not sure if I just played it wrong previously, and that's why it didn't feel as good. But I have the feeling that Underground Tunnel Enjoyer plays it quite a lot and knows what he's doing. A helicopter coming in? Well, it's just a 65 point with a hard to rocket helicopter, so it's not a very deadly helicopter, not a... Oh, I'm not sure what the best comparison would be actually. But yeah, it's just a cheap helicopter. It can do some damage, especially if there's no A around and against these cheap tanks. But if we watch the kill count, 3 Marders going down, 2 Panzergrenadiers, artillery getting hits on the 2A3 Leopard tank. So everything seems to go into favor of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer at the moment. Even with the infantry units in the south getting some damage done, or at least having the position to potentially cause damage. Maybe he should move towards the road to get the anti-tank rocket launcher on target. So the question is, should Wombat play completely defensive since he has the point lead? Or does he have to retaliate more to ensure that there's no dangerous blob of huge quantities of units on the side of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer? And that the artillery of the red side makes too much work? Well, I guess if he wants to stop the artillery, he has to do the opposite and attack. But yeah, it's difficult at the moment. The CV getting into the zone in the south. 2 IF3 and a Leopard giving some fire support, but the Grenadier is probably going down. And that will probably mean that there's not much scouting left. Two rockets wasted on a supply truck. But yeah. Now a +2 tick for the red side. A scout in the backline. I'm not sure if the helicopter can actually see it, probably. If it's flying, but down low. But there is no big push coming from the blue side at the moment. Not many infantry units. While he does come in with 4 new infantry Panzergrenadier units as support. The Leopard is stressed out, so maybe he got hit in the back, but I'm not sure by what. I thought it was a scout, but the scout has the 4 Pittsburgh Law rockets, so that's not it. Let me lance this thing around in the open. I think that's one issue Wombat could work on, is that he had multiple times where his units were standing around in the open for a longer period of time. That he moves them into cover and is a bit more active in this regard. Ihawk getting destroyed by the artillery. So that's something that would be a nice pick off, but there were no planes so far, so I'm not sure why he's taking out the Ihawk. There might be better targets if you don't use any planes. Actually, have two AA guns now also attacking the southern zone. So Wombat definitely tries to take back the zone in the south. The CV is already in this forest over here, so if he can get firing support, or the firing control over the zone, and remove the enemy units, then he can send on the CV and stop the tick. But it's obviously not done yet. He probably waits for the infantry unit to move forward so that he has the scouting to then destroy the units. He might not be able to see the units yet from this building, maybe if he moves into the next one. A bit of back and forth in the center, but nothing decisive yet. Panzergrenadier manages to see the first unit. It's not the CV. Well, no, the CV is also seen. So now the units can start firing if they move into position to fire. Now they're firing. That's the infantry unit that moves forward. And we can hear that the CV is actually moving into the center position from the red side. So now he's at a +3. And the CV for the blue side is not in the zone, but outside of it. So he might get the capture for the moment. Artillery getting some units. And a lot of M47 tanks now moving in for the attack. And it's another one of these big blobs of cheap units just rushing down the position. Panzergrenadier in the south going down, so scouting limited again. The Fuchs is a bit too far in the back to see much. Artillery now striking the Milans that were standing around for too long. Pioneers are probably moving forward soon, but the CV is leaving the area to be on the safe side. And now we see cluster planes coming in against the Leo 2A3. First one would have been enough, but he wanted to make it sure. And since the Ihawk was destroyed with artillery earlier, he was able to pick off the tank without losing his planes or getting hit before being able to drop the bombs. So now Underground Tunnel Enjoyer is actually in the lead with his +4 tick, and he seems quite convincingly ahead in general on the battlefield. I'm actually not sure now that I think about what is the best counter against such a cheap reservists blob rush attacking force. Because if you have two heavy units, you have too few. So is a mediocre division a good counter? Artillery getting another kill. A lot of Marder Milans getting destroyed. The second Panzergrenadier actually has a lot of those, but they're also limited. So I'm not sure if he isn't about to run out of those at some point. It's 20 minutes into the map and we have already seen quite a lot getting destroyed. Special Forces scout moving forward. Maybe to actually snipe the CV if he knows that it's there. Bar commandos also moving through the forest. So with the support of the infantry units in the front and the tanks and scimitar in the back, I think this forest area will now be taken by Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. That might actually put the nail in the coffin at this point. southern zone got secured. The units were all pushed back or destroyed. Actually, the Pioneers also getting under fire. And they have no rocket launcher, so the JPK can kill them without getting retaliated. But obviously, not necessary anymore. Cheyenne Mountain Complex or Underground Tunnel Enjoyer does take the win. 2.31 kill ratio. So here's a 2-0 win over Wombat, or MiG-29S also, depending on if you look in the game or on Discord, which can be a bit confusing if they're different names for the same person. So please forgive me if I mix those up. If you look at the kills, quite a lot of kills for the Power Commando at the early stage of the game, where the units were killed in the transport as they cross-pass in their deployment in the opener. So that was quite beneficial for the side of Underground Tunnel Enjoyer. I don't think that it made the difference in the end, but it definitely gave him some tempo advantage. And we have quite a few other units with some kills. Artillery not getting as many kills as I would have thought. A lot of kills spread out across different units. But obviously with this big blob unit type of play from the Reservist division, that's to be expected. So I hope I was at least a little bit helpful with my commentary, and thank you all for watching. See you next time.